I've clicked onto the global tropical RE for January the 11th, 2024. As is always the case in these videos, the tropics pressure amount alone, and when making decisions ahead of any tropical cyclones, look towards your local weather office, local emergency management, and local tropical cyclone warning center. So we're going to be talking about a few systems today. We've got a trough here across the Indian Ocean that is likely to develop into a tropical cyclone that comes south and southwest, and we're now having some growing concerns of a significant threat to La Reunion and Mauritius as we go into next week. We're also going to be talking about the Australian region as there is potential for some development here across northern Australia, but that will be in the latter half of the video, and I'll leave a timestamp to that if you want to skip ahead to that portion of the video. Well, we're going to start off in the Indian Ocean as we have, once again, this trough of low pressure draped across the ocean here, denoted by a lot of this thunderstorm activity. And as the system dives towards the south over the next couple of days, the environmental conditions will become increasingly favorable for tropical development. And now there is high confidence, in fact, I'd say very high confidence, that a tropical cyclone will develop here north of Mauritius and La Reunion. And once the system does develop, the environment will likely also favor some intensification as it does continue further south. Now, we're going to go right into some of the model loops today. This is the low-level flow from the GFS and vorticity or spin denoted in yellow. So you can see a lot of this spin here is associated with the trough, and you can also see the outline of the trough from the wind barbs, with westerly winds on the northern side turning to easterly winds on the southern side. So we've got this general trough axis here with maybe an area of low pressure developing on the eastern side. And we're going to be watching this area of low pressure very closely, especially over the next couple of days as this does dive towards the southwest. Now, I'm going to show you this run. As it comes for the southeast, you can see it amplify a little bit, and we start to get development taking place by the weekend. And you can see the environment as the system is developing is very favorable. We've got a low shear environment with upper level anticyclonic flow here. This is denoting a very low shear environment. And there's also potential, later down the line at least, for a jet streak to set up for the south. So we have sort of an equatorward outflow channel and the potential later down the line for a poleward outflow channel to open up, which is very favorable for tropical cyclones. Now, as the system does come south, you'll see on the GFS, we are a little bit further west than yesterday. This GFS comes very uncomfortably close to the island of Mauritius. It's right about there on the map. So you can see the storm sort of bends like that. So that's very close to the island on this run. And this is further west than yesterday. And we talked about yesterday how the GFS was showing in this low-level flow, we had more southerly flow when the system was developing, which allowed it to stay further east and allowed it to go in between Mauritius and Rodrigues. Unfortunately, the trend today has been more towards the European. And I can show you that in a sounding here. Just ignore all of this. Just pay attention mainly to this stuff here in this low-level part of the steering. You can see now, rather than having just pure southerly flow in this part of the atmosphere, we have more of a southwesterly component when the system is weak and developing. This allows the system to just barely track a little bit further towards the west rather than going due south like yesterday, and allows the system to get north of Mauritius and La Reunion before it starts coming more due south and turning towards the southeast, which unfortunately does increase the chance of an impact to those islands. And that's exactly what the European showed. The European is still consistent on this. It is showing this southwesterly push when it is still weak. And you can see on the European run, we had the system going right over the island of Mauritius on this run. So it has come a little bit further towards the northeast on the run, but we're still looking at significant impacts to these islands. And unfortunately, this is not just the GFS and the European. This is the Canadian as well for comparison, and you can see the system comes very close on this run as well to the island of Mauritius. So what we've seen over the past day is increased confidence in potential, significant impacts to the island of La Reunion. and Mauritius. But I do want to make something clear here. Just because the trend today has been further west does not mean it can't come further east in the coming days. For those in Rodrigues, it's still important that you all stay closely monitoring this system as it does come toward the south. Eventually, we will get some troughing to come south, and you can see that, or come north in this case, and pull the system south. And you can see that on the European. This is a 500 millibar height anomaly map. And what we've got is we've got a ridge to the east of the system and a trough down south. And these are going to work together to bring the system towards the south and eventually towards the southeast. You'll be able to see it a little bit better in the upper level flow. You can see over time the system starts to come towards the southeast as this upper trough digs in. And as it does dig in, the storm starts to track southeast. Exactly how far west or east this is will be important for Rodrigues, and also for Mauritius and La Réunion. If the system is a little bit further east than models expect right now, this bend towards the southeast could have the storm get uncomfortably close to the island of Rodrigues here. Ideally, we get the system coming right in between these islands and we have minimal impacts brought to either island. And I suppose that is still somewhat of a scenario here, but the more likely scenario today is that some form of land impacts is brought to either La Réunion and Mauritius, or still potentially Rodrigues if it does trend a little bit further east and bend back your way. Now, the impacts here, exactly the specifics, you can't get into exactly who would get the worst of rains, who would get the worst of wind, but we can say that for areas like Mauritius and La Réunion and Rodrigues, we will likely see some heavy rainfall here, and we may see some storm surge and wind impacts in a time frame here for the system coming through. And you can see that here on the GFS, it's around late this weekend into early next week. So you have a few days to prepare. And what you need to do right now really is stay tuned to Meteo France. They'll have tropical weather outlooks, and I'd imagine advisories fairly soon for the system as it does develop. And also, you need to look at your cyclone preparedness kit, not just for this system, but also for future systems. For example, if in Rodrigues, if you do take your preparedness ahead of the storm and it does miss you, it's good to have your preparedness kit ready as we are going into now the peak season months. But you need to have your preparedness kit ready, review it, and make sure you take the necessary precautions ahead of the storm, as the environment here is looking favorable for some development. And as the system, I do want to mention, as the system does come south with this jet interaction, you can see ahead of the trough and southeast of the storm, there's this large jet streak taking shape. If this does happen a little bit earlier in timing, as the system is coming right through Mauritius or La Réunion or Rodrigues, this could favor a phase of quick to rapid intensification as the system does come through. And you can also see that dual outflow channel like I talked about earlier, with poleward outflow here and equatorward outflow here. It is very favorable for intensification. We've seen it several times, and it's just vital that you all stay very tuned, very closely tuned to your local weather office and Meteo France for this system. This is our current tropical weather outlook, and you can see a high chance of development. If I had to give a percentage out of this, I'd give it about 80 or 90% by now. Models are very in agreement, very much in agreement on this system developing here. And we'll keep an eye on this as it does come south. And I'll leave links to Meteo France and local weather offices at the top of the description, as I always do in these videos. And I'll also have future videos throughout the rest of this week, into this weekend, and into early next week as the system does come through. All right, so now we're going to move to the Australian region, as we have a lot of thunderstorm activity taking shape across the Australian region today. You can see all this convection across the northern part of Australia, contributing to a lot of heavy rainfall across several areas. And over the coming days, this system is really not going to move too much, and heavy rainfall will remain a big concern here. But over time, we might see some tropical development take place as the environment is favorable for some development. Now, this is a 850 millibar vorticity plot from the GFS, and you can see that we have, once again, this large and broad area of low pressure across northern Australia. And the main question here, similar to yesterday, is exactly how much water time do some of the lobes of low pressure within this larger gyre get? Primarily this one here near the Northern Territories, and another one that is likely to form in the Gulf of Carpentaria later down the line. Now, right now, models are in good agreement that this little lobe here in the Northern Territories is likely to remain along the coastline. So while development may still be, I'd say, decent odds right now, intensification into a significant storm do not look too likely, at least from the things of how they look right now. In terms of the secondary system, you can see it developed there on the GFS in the southern Gulf of Carpentaria, and the environment may be favorable for this system, and this might be a little quick spin up on the GFS here in the Gulf of Carpentaria. Now, the GFS does have a tendency to spin up systems very quickly, but the Gulf of Carpentaria does have very warm sea surface temperatures, and if the environment does favor the tropical cyclone, it could develop in a fairly quick fashion here, especially if it's more compact like the GFS does show here. And I can show you the environment here. You can see this is the, I think the mid to upper level wind plot from CIMSS, and you can see this large upper ridge draped across both of our areas of low pressure. There might be a little bit of displacement on the western one, but for the Gulf of Carpentaria system, it's a bit more directly underneath that upper level bridge, and this will likely sustain over the coming days as the system does develop. And with those warm sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Carpentaria, it does leave the question, could the GFS be onto something with a quick development there? Now, something to note is that regardless of any development of either two of these systems, this lobe of low pressure, or this general gyre rather, will just persist to bring lots of heavy rainfall to the region over likely the next week. This is the GFS ensemble rainfall forecast over the next week, and you can see, we have a lot of significant totals here. Anything in this darker purple is 150 millimeters or greater here. And we have some areas of enhanced rainfall where we might see some tropical cyclone development here that could potentially go upwards of 200 millimeters or more, depending on exactly what happens there. If the system does form in the Gulf of Carpentaria, or if the system forms along the coastline of the Northern Territories, really all you do there is increase the rain threat, or sorry, the wind threat. The rain threat really does not change between these two systems. Now, notably, the system forming in the Gulf of Carpentaria is forecast by the GFS and the European to enter the Coral Sea, where development might also take place there. Whether or not that has potential impacts later down the line for areas like New Caledonia, not exactly sure. That's pretty far down the line. That's over a week out by the time it actually gets there, as you can see. And we'll have to just pay attention to that as it does track towards the southeast. But the main key messages here across Northern Australia is the potential for tropical development is there. The Bureau of Meteorology gives both of these systems about a low chance. I believe they give tropical low 3 you a moderate chance of development. Yeah, they do. Tropical low 5 you in the Gulf of Carpentaria about a low chance of development there. But regardless of tropical development, heavy rainfall will continue across Northern Australia, and we may see some localized flooding issues along the coastal areas and inland areas, as you can see here with this rainfall forecast from the GFS ensemble. But that's all for now. There's a lot to talk about and a lot that's likely going to happen over the next few days across the tropics, and even next week we may still see more development after these systems, so I'll keep you all updated on that. But again, I'll leave links to Mateo France, the Bureau of Meteorology, and some local weather offices in the description at the top, so you can click those and head right to those to get the local information that you need. And for everyone ahead of all the storms mentioned today, stay safe and make sure you take the necessary precautions, especially in La Reunion and Mauritius, as we are again looking at potential for a significant tropical cyclone coming your way next week. But I'll have future videos later this week, but that's it for now, and thanks for watching.